be live. There you go.
Rubik's. Ruby. Come here, Rubik's. Come on.
Start?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Mrs. Hessler with a bonus lesson, and the bonus lesson is the March 2021 test.
Pick a pen.
Oh, sorry. So this is the most recent test that the College Board has released. Some of you have taken it, and we did discover that maybe your math questions are in a different order. But we're going to go through the no calculator first, and so you can go through every question or fast forward through the ones you missed. But this is to give you some more practice. So if we go to question 1, the function h is defined by h of x is minus 1/4 x minus 2, which is the graph of y equals h of x. Well, we can see the y-intercept is a minus 2, which occurs in D, and also the slope is minus 1/4. So just looking at it, flag like an eagle above the problem, minus 2 and down 1/4. The answer for number 1 is D. So moving on to 2, we need the positive solution, so we subtract 10 from both sides. And so x could be plus or minus 9, but we want the positive solution, so our answer is 9. Number 3, what value of x satisfies the given equation? So first we're going to distribute the 3. These are still in the easy zone. So we subtract, or we could add 9. Subtract an x. So 2x is 18, so x is 8. Number 4, a line in the xy plane has a slope of 1. That's our rate, and it goes through 0, 2. So that means our y-intercept is 2. Here is our answer because the slope is 1 and the and our y equals mx plus b format. We're all the way up to 5. From 1990 to 2001, German currency included coins called pfennigs, worth 1 pfennig each, and Groschen, I guess, worth 10 pfennigs each. Which equation we want the total number of pfennigs coins and Groschen coins, which would combine to equal 85 pfennigs? Well, we know that basically for this one, that a Groschen would equal 10 pfennigs. So we need to multiply the amount of Groschens by 10, and so the answer for this one would be B. So our answer is in terms of pfennigs. So far not so bad. We did ones like this. X is positive because we can't have x is 0. Which of the following is equivalent to this? So we don't have common denominators. We have fractions.
Let's zoom in a little bit.
Sure. We have fractions. It's a little fuzzy here.
I think that'll go away.
No,
Give it a second. It should.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here we are. So we do not have a common denominator. So our common denominator is going to be 2x. So we multiply this by 2 and then the numerator by 2. That'll give us 2 plus 1 over 2x, which equals 3 over 2x, which is answer choice C. So number 7. So this is tricky because they do not give you the formula for the circle in the coordinate plane, which is x minus h squared plus, we're going to be doing this in a lesson, but you can see this really ramped things up right away. So we have to complete the square. So here we're going to divide the first part, divide this by 2, and so that would be x minus 5 squared. And then we'll take this part. Now we're going to do a lesson on this, so if you are a little lost, that's okay. Divide this by 2, and that'll be y. Basically, we have to have, it's going to be a plus 3. So that means, according to this formula, the x is 5, this is tricky, and the y is going to be a minus 3. So the answer for this one is C, number 7.
Did you find the radius for that one? I know you don't need to.
No, we don't need to.
I think it was 6, but
Okay. So let's go up to 8. What point is the solution? So I'm just gonna try the answer choices in order. So if I try A, is 1 bigger than 4 times 1? No. So let's try B. Is a minus 2 greater than a minus 8? Because that would be 4 times a minus 2. And indeed it is. So B is our answer. Number 9, more slope stuff. The equation H equals 150 plus 10T gives the total number of housing units in a community T months after a new zoning law was passed. So we start with 150 housing units, and then it's 10 per month. So each month would be answer choice A. Now we're going on to 11.
we've done 10.
Oh, 10, I'm sorry. So we did this in the polynomial lesson, which we haven't done yet in this class, but we'll be doing these. So we just have to distribute a -5. And I like to put these in a vertical form, plus x plus 7. And so that's going to give me minus 3x squared plus 4x plus 5, which looks a lot like D. So this one's a little tricky. So if we plot these points, we have the zeros. X is a 1, because x minus 1 is 0, so x is 1, x is a minus 1, and x is a minus 2. So if we plot these 3 points, and we know it's an odd number, so it's y equals x cubed, which graphs sort of like this. So we know our graph looks like this, sort of, with only one end up. And then we can sort of see what's not a possible value of B, which is the y value. Well, the y value can be a minus 2, obviously.
You're just on this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're on that interval there.
Yeah, I'm on this interval, sorry. We want not a possible value. So we could have a minus 2, we could have a minus 1, but we can't have a 1 on the function, because if x is 0, with our y-intercept thing, we want B to be the y value where x is 0, and it can't be 1. So number 12, which is over here, so they give us the volume of a sphere in the formula page 4/3 pi r cubed, right?
Mhm.
And so this is a good example to pick a number. So let's say the small x is 1. So if x is 1, then our volume is just going to be 4/3 pi. If we triple...
That's the diameter, not the radius.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to get the phone.
Yeah.
Look.
Okay, so that was nonsensical. So anyway, he's right. The diameter is 3x. So let's say the diameter is 2, and that would make the radius 1. So then this new diameter is going to be 3 times that, or 6 for the diameter, which makes the radius 3. And so if we put in 3 here, we can see it's going to be 27 times as big as the first one. And so that answer will be 27 to 1. Good use of pick the numbers there. Okay, let's go on to this one, 13. Well, we know we can try some intercepts, so let's
zoom it out so you can see all the graphs.
Oh, we want to see all the graphs, yeah.
See if that works. It might be foggy for a second.
Okay, so let's put x is 0, because that we know with our intercepts graphs, if x is 0, we get the y-intercept. So let's say x is 0. So that'll be any number to the 0 power is 1. So then y would equal 2. So we know it has to go through 0, 2, which right now that eliminates these two. And then let's put 1 in for x. So if we put 1 in for x, that would be 2 times 3 to the first, and 2 times 3 is 6. So 1 point would be x is 1, y is 6, which occurs right here in A. Thank you, College Board, for 10 points. So we just picked some reasonable numbers, 0 and 1, because they're in the goal of this area. Now we're going on to 14. Oh, this is not bad at all. We just need f of x is 0. So we have possibilities of a -2, a 1, and a 2 1/4 maybe. So the one they give us is C. And we're going to do this in the function lesson. The function a of t is 12 times 2 t over 6, the water hyacinths in a population over time. T is the time in days. So this means basically we start off with 12 hyacinths. That's where we start. It doubles. That's the rate. And we need to get this in days. We need this to be a 1. So it didn't just double. It's going to double every 6 days, because that'll change this to a 1. So hopefully that's okay. We're now moving on to the calculator part. So we always say you promise one of these. We have to get the t to stand alone. So let's manipulate this a little bit. We're going to add AD to both sides. Then we're going to divide by 4. And so we want the A. We always look at the prompt. The A is the number before the D, which in this case will be 2, because it'll be 2D. So the answer for this one is 2. Then we go to 17. So they give us a trapezoid.
I might zoom you in for this one too, just so you can draw on it.
Okay. So what do we know? We have to draw a line. We're trying to get the perimeter of the triangle, of the trapezoid. So we need to get these two sides out here. So we have to draw a line. They don't tell us this. So this will be a 6. We know that this is going to be divided equally. So this will be 13 and 13. But we're taking away the 5 here. And so if this is 13 minus 5, this will be 8. And we're going to learn this in the triangle lesson. We could use the Pythagorean Theorem, obviously. My pen got very thick. Just saying. I don't know why.
That's probably because I zoomed you in.
Okay. So we could use the Pythagorean Theorem, or we could just know it's a 3, 4 multiple. So this is 3, 4, 5 triangles. So 3 times 2, 4 times 2. We got the same thing here, 5 times 2. So this is 10, and this is 10.
I'll zoom you back out so you can finish it.
Okay, so now we're just going to add all the lengths.
Just give it a second.
So we have 3 10s and a 26. So this answer will be 56. Now we're doing 18. So in the quadrilateral formula, I mean the b squared minus 4ac, you have to know. So we want to get, let's look at the prompt. We want to get n plus k, which is the reduced value under the radical. So let's just do this over here since we have a lot of space. A is 1. Remember, we're going to be telling you in the polynomial lesson that one time usually on the no calculator part, you have to use the quadratic formula. So we're going to put it in minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Sorry about the phone call. I'm going to sort of ignore it. So that'll be 2.
Hello?
So that'll be
This is not him. Can I get him?
4 plus 4.
Oh, yeah, she's busy at the moment, but let me get my for you.
Okay, so now we have to reduce this. So this will be 2 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 8 over 2. Now we have to simplify this. That's the tricky part. So that's going to be 3 2's under the radical, which we learned in the radical lesson. That's going to be 2 square root of 2 over 2. So that'll just be 1 plus or minus the square root of 2. So basically n is 1, k is 2, and our gridded answer will be 3 here. So let's go on to 19. Okay, so we did a lot of systems. They're all over the test too. So we're trying to find x. So what we're going to do is let's eliminate y by multiplying this through by a minus 7. So that'll give us negative 28x minus 7y equals...
Just positive, though.
Oh.
You want positive?
Yeah, I want a positive. Sorry. What was I thinking? Equals 49, 2x minus 7y equals 1. 30x equals 50. Dividing by 30, x is going to be 5/3. Okay. The last one goes to no solution. So remember, no solution is parallel lines. So that means the same slope, but a different y-intercept. Well, we already have a different y-intercept here. So the easiest thing is just to make k a half. And then we do have parallel lines, one going through 5 and one going through 7. So that's the no calculator, and now Jim is going to take you, yeah, okay.
Okay, so we are going to jump right into the writing section. I know we're kind of moving around today, but trust us, there is method to our madness. So this is section 2 of the March 21st SAT. Looking for this now. Alright. Where does it begin? Looks like it begins over here. There we go. So we'll start with this. This is section 2 for the English. All right, so the first passage is called Shedding Light on the Problem. All right. All right, so I'm going to read the sentence. Here it says, interestingly, a 2017 ecological study led by Dr. Ava Knopp suggests that artificial lighting, the modern conveyance that illuminates many streets, storefronts, and athletic fields, may be contributing to the decline of these organisms. And we just have to conjugate this verb, and it actually was conjugated correctly. This one's actually a no change. So about 1 out of 5, every now and then it will be a no change. So don't ignore that answer choice. It's just a little more rare than the others. Let's look at number 2. Okay, so here's a question. It looks to be on punctuation. It looks like they're comparing semicolons, colons, and commas, or no punctuation. We have to choose which is correct here. So I'm going to read the sentence as written, and then we can make a determination. So it says, daytime pollinators, such as bees and butterflies, have many well-documented threats. So Dr. Knopp's team sought to investigate a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators, semicolon, artificial light. So for this type of question, I just want to introduce an idea here. And this is the idea of a parenthetical. And in English, we can offset parentheticals in 3 different ways, and they vary in intensity. So I'm just going to write this down here. Least intensive. Oh, sorry. And over here, I'm going to write most intensive. Okay, so the 3 ways we offset parenthetical information in English are parentheses. That's the least intensive. Commas are slightly more intensive. And then the most intensive way to offset parenthetical information would be a strong dash, an M dash. They call it an M dash because it's the length of an M dash. But we introduced it with a comma, so it looks like we're using these commas here, not any of the other options, which is just answer choice. Oh wait, no, I messed this up. It's not that type of question. Sorry, let's go back. All right, so I made a mistake here, sorry. Okay, going back to this one. They're testing you not on that. They're testing you on colons. Sorry. So root eliminates some of the notes I made here. They're testing you on colons versus semicolons. So there is a rule for the colon. Let's go over the colon rule. All right, so the rule about colons that they're testing you on. All right, so can we use a semicolon here answer choice A, no. And the reason why is semicolons only join two independent clauses. This right here, what I'm about to highlight, is not a complete sentence. Artificial light is not a complete is not a complete thought. So because that is not a complete thought, we cannot use a semicolon there. So semicolon is out. But we can use a colon because the colon has no such rule that it only connects two independent clauses. The rule about colons is that whatever precedes the colon, whatever goes, I'm going to put a colon here because this is actually what should be here. So the rule about colons is whatever goes in front of the colon has to be a complete thought. So I'm just going to check it real quickly. Is this a sentence? What I'm about to read here. Daytime pollinators such as bees and butterflies have many well-documented threats. So Dr. Knopp's team sought to investigate a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators, period. So because that could be a sentence, I can put a colon there. A full sentence, a complete thought, an independent clause must precede a colon. But whatever follows the colon can be a single word. There's no such rule about what follows the colon. All right. Okay, let's move on to number 3. I'm going to read the sentence as written. Before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to outlaw visits from pollinators. So it looks like they're testing you on word choice. And the College Board, they like to pick answer choices that almost work. It would almost make sense to outlaw visits, but not really. The best answer choice would be prevent. This maintains the formal style of a College Board SAT writing passage. We haven't deviated from a formal style. Talking about outlaw visits, I think that would put us into an informal situation. And really, we've lost meaning. That's the improper word choice. They pick near words. They pick words that almost would make sense. So we're preventing visits. We're not outlawing them. There's a distinction there. Now let's look at 4. So this is the second half of that sentence. It says, before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to prevent visits from pollinators, comma, however, comma, others were left unbagged. So let's look at this one. So this one we have too many commas, and however doesn't fit in either as well. This one's just B. So I'm going to read the corrected versions. Before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to prevent visits from pollinators, comma, while others were left unbagged. So we can use the comma and while here. Meanwhile, with another comma, this would be an extra comma, and meanwhile would make no sense. And then this answer choice D makes no logical sense. So 4 was B. Now we are on to 5. And here's a sequencing question. So they're asking you to sequence this. It says the author wants to add the following sentence to this paragraph, and we have to put it somewhere within this paragraph here. They've bracketed the numbers to tell us the order of these sentences. That's what these bracketed numbers are here. This is sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3, sentence 4. So we have to figure out where this new sentence goes within the paragraph. And for a sequencing question, such as this, I like to say that the College Board always gives you a clue. They always give you a clue within the sentence as to where it lives within the paragraph. What's the clue for this one? These words right here. Each category. So right here, there's our clue. Each category. So this sentence must immediately follow the sentence that explains the two categories. There's no other place this could go within the passage. So this has to follow sentence 3, where they explain the two categories, bagged and unbagged. So once you've moved it to the proper place, always read it back to back in a new place, and it must make sense in the paragraph. It should fit like a glove. I'm going to do that right now. So here's sentence 3 and the new sentence right back to back. Before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to prevent visits from pollinators, while others were left unbagged. Half of the plants in each category, bagged and unbagged, were then illuminated during the nighttime hours. So that's the only place this new sentence can fit. After that sentence explaining the two categories, they always give you a clue for a sequencing question. The College Board has to write these questions so specific that it would be impossible to place this sentence anywhere else within the logic of the paragraph. So that's why they have to give you that clue. So that's good news for you, the test taker. Let's look at 6. Which choice most effectively combines the sentences at the underlined portion? So let me read the two sentences, and then we will figure out how to combine them. The bagged plants couldn't be visited by pollinators. Because of that fact, the bagged plants self-fertilize and thus averaged only about 15 fruits per plant in dark sites, but 85 fruits per plant in illuminated sites. All right, so we're combining those two sentences. And for this type of question, I like to do this strategy. What strategy? This one, the count the number of words strategy. So it's not cheating. Here's the count the number of words strategy. I'm just going to do it. Answer choice A was 15 words. Answer choice B was 14 words long. Answer choice C was 10 words long. And answer choice D was also 10 words long. I am going to eliminate the wordy answer choices. The concise answer choice on the SAT is most often the correct answer choice. Answer choices A and B are out. They are unnecessarily long. The College Board prefers a simple way of phrasing something typically. And so we just have to figure out which one best combines the two sentences. So C says the pollinators couldn't visit the bagged plants and those plants self-fertilized, which is awkward. The correct answer is actually D. This is the most logical way of phrasing the sentence and combining them. Because they couldn't be visited by pollinators, the bagged plants self-fertilized and thus averaged only about 15 fruits per plant. So remember to count the words on the SAT. It should be helpful for you. Just another strategy for your arsenal. Let's look at 7. Okay. Let's see as it focuses here. Which choice provides accurate information from the graph? So I'm going to find this graph. Here's our graph. Give it a second to load up. All right, so it says, which choice accurately represent the information from the graph? So let me read the question as written, but this is probably incorrect. This is probably not what is stated in the graph, but I'm just going to read. This would be answer choice A. As written says, on the other hand, unbagged plants from the dark sites produced an average of 90 fruits per plant, whereas bagged plants that were exposed to artificial light produced an average of 78 fruits per plant, a 13% decline in fruit production for plants that were illuminated at night. So that is not what is reflected in the graph. I'm just going to cross off A. A is out. That's not what the graph shows. What does the graph show? I'm going to reread this sentence. On the other hand, unbagged plants from the dark sites produce an average of 90 fruits per plant, whereas unbagged plants from the illuminated sites produced an average of 78. That's right here. 78 fruits per plant, a 13% decline in fruit production. So that was answer choice C. It was those for number 8, it was the unbagged plants, not the bag. This should say unbagged. It was the unbagged plants that were 78 according to our graph. So can you read a graph? I know that's not a great line, but trust me, that's 78. I use my calibrated eyeball for that one. Let's look at the next question. So that was 8. Let's look at number 9. Which choice provides the best transition to the paragraph that follows? So for this type of question, we might want to glance at the paragraph that is to come and just see if we can associate it with an idea that we need to introduce. So let's look at this one. I'm going to read the sentence as written. Here we go. From these results, the researchers concluded that nocturnal pollinators were avoiding the unbagged plants in the illuminated sites, which affected the overall yield of the plants. So we want the best transition to the paragraph that follows. And the paragraph that follows actually supports D. The daytime pollinators were not making up for the loss. So which overall affected the overall yield of the plants is incorrect. It's actually D. The best transition to the next paragraph is about the daytime pollinators not making up for the loss, because that's what this following paragraph, that is what the next paragraph is all about. All right, so that one was D. Let's look at number 10. The scientists also found that the decline in nighttime pollination visits coincided with a decline in visits from daytime pollinators. That's just so you saw that. The daytime pollinators they were looking for in question 9, because they were asking you about the next paragraph. That's why. That's our transition to the daytime pollinators. So we just have to come up with the best word choice here. Is coincided with the best word choice. Here we go. The scientists also found the decline in nighttime pollination visits coincided with. We have some options. We could say it coexisted to a decline in visits, corresponded for, or correlated in. And you know what the big... I'm going to just go ahead and say this. They're kind of testing you on prepositions here. Prepositions come before words to make prepositional phrases, and some of them are idiomatic. And that's kind of what we have here. Idiomatic prepositions. So they've just derived through usage. They're idiomatic. There's no real reason why we use one preposition over another except usage. It's just how it's always been done. And things have always coincided with things. Things have always corresponded with things. And things have correlated with other things. In the context of this, correlated in a decline wouldn't make sense. Correlated with or corresponded with would make sense. Those are the correct prepositions, but those aren't in our answer choices. But it is in answer choice A, no change. So this has the correct preposition with. It coincided with. Correlated or corresponded with would make sense, but corresponded for makes no sense because it's the wrong preposition. And this would be the wrong preposition too. So they're just testing you on prepositions. This one's actually a no change. Every now and then it's no change. Whatever the reason, artificial illumination clearly has adverse effects on plant pollination, and the increasing presence with a T of artificial lighting may pose a major problem for biodiversity. So of course they will test you on homophones, homonyms. These are words that sound similar to another, even if they are spelled differently, which is answer choice C. We are talking about presence with a C, not presence with a T. Presence with a T would be a Christmas celebration. Presence with a C is what we have here. They're present in that sense. All right, let's look at 12. Okay. Oh, we're on to the next passage. Great. Okay, so this next passage says it is called Benefits of Dress Code Flexibility, and we are on question 12. So I'm going to read the sentence as written. Let's start with this one. All right, here we go. In July 2016, the coffee shop chain Starbucks instituted a new policy to relax its dress code, the decision allowing customers to customize their previously uniform looks with such accessories as hats and colorful socks reflects workplaces across the United States. So is reflects the right word here? I know if you're counting the number of words, you may say, well, that is the shortest one. But it is actually not it's the 5-word answer choice for this one. So 9 times out of 10, the short answer choices are correct. But in this case, it would just make no sense because you're not reflecting the workplace itself. You're reflecting a trend in the workplace. So it would just be an illogical comparison if you chose A. It would make no sense. Even though it's the one-word answer, It is succinct. It just makes no logical sense. So it has to make sense. So I like to pick concise answer choices when they make logical sense. And in this case, A is out. So even though it was short, it just made no sense. Answer choice C was 7 words long. Answer choice D was 8 words long. I did throw out the wordy answer choices. B was correct. So we can compare, we can make a logical comparison here. I'm going to reread the sentence with the correct answer choice. The decision allowing employees to customize their previously uniform looks with such accessories as hats and colorful socks reflects not the workplaces, but a new trend in workplaces across the United States. Okay, so that was number 12. Let's look at 13. All right, I'm going to read this sentence. From retail services to large corporate offices, employers are finding that flexible dress codes can make a company more attractive to potential workers, semicolon, boosting morale among current employees. So the College Board loves semicolons. They're on every SAT. I'm not sure why they love semicolons so much, but here's why you can't use a semicolon here. Because what I'm about to highlight is not a sentence. This is not a sentence. Boosting morale among current employees is not a complete thought. That is not an independent clause. That is rather a fragment. So semicolon is out, which was answer choice A. What about a wordy answer choice? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words maybe. 3 words? 3 words. I'm going to cross off the wordy choice. B is out. So is it the 3-word answer choice or the 3-word answer choice? Well, if you look at answer choice C, and boosting morale among current employees is also not a sentence. That's the same problem we had with answer choice A, so it's out. 13 is just D. I'm going to read the corrected version. From retail services to large corporate offices, employers are finding that flexible dress codes can make a company more attractive to potential workers and boost morale among current employees. So remember to count the number of words, throw out the wordy answer choices, but also remember that the correct answer choice has to follow conventions of grammar and standard written English, such as you can't use a semicolon to join two things that couldn't be independent clauses. Or here, you can't have a fragment and punctuate it as a sentence. That would be incorrect. So just be aware, All right, let's look at 14. Also, being able to personalize otherwise identical uniforms with unique flourishes can enhance happiness by allowing them to retain a greater sense of personal identity in the workplace. Whom? So what we have here is an ambiguous pronoun. Ambiguous. Write this out. Ambiguous pronoun. Who could them? Who are they? Ambiguous. Him or her would also be ambiguous. The flourishes? I don't think that makes any sense. We need the antecedent to go with our pronoun. What would the antecedent be? Just the employees. So we can't put an ambiguous pronoun here. Let's just throw in who we're talking about, the employees, and this should make more sense. Here we go. Also, being able to personalize otherwise identical uniforms with unique flourishes can enhance happiness by allowing employees to retain a greater sense of personal identity in the workplace. So if it's not immediately obvious who we're talking about, the College Board considers that pronoun ambiguity. You have to clarify. And how can we clarify? Let's just throw the antecedent in, the employees. All right, moving right along, we are on number 15. Individuals, motives. So that's plural. Many individuals possess motives, may vary, but job recruiters are finding that many potential employees do indeed share a preference for flexible dress codes and embracing this preference could help employees attract a wider range of talent. So yes, we did have multiple individuals, and yes, they were possessive of the many motives, which is a no change. Answer choice C would be one individual possessing multiple motives, and answer choice B and D, there's no possession for individuals. Even if there's possession for motives, it shouldn't be there. Those ones are out. So we're talking about many individuals and their motives. So we put the apostrophe after the S. That's how it works. It is plural. All right, moving on to 16. According to a 2016 study, essentially none of those surveyed wanted to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code. So they're just testing you. Can you read a chart? Here's our chart. Do essentially none of those surveyed want to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code? I'm just waiting for this to focus a little bit, sorry. All right. So I know I said that you don't really have to perform any complex math with these, but we're really just adding two numbers. So I'm adding 31%, the people who would prefer to work at a business company that has a business casual dress code. I'm going to add them to the 27% who say they would prefer to work at a company that has a casual dress code or no dress code. And I got 58%, which is more than half. It's 8% more than half. So about 58% would say they want to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code. All right, 17. At this point, the writer is considering adding the following sentence based on the information from the table. Only 18% preferred a more formal dress code at work. All right, so let's look at the information here. So does that misinterpret information from the table? No. So C is out. Is it a loosely related detail? No, I'd say it's related. Okay, so does it refute the opposing point of view referred to elsewhere in the paragraph? No. I don't even know what opposing point of view, I guess, about dress codes, but that doesn't make any sense. It just should be here because it provides additional evidence that supports the writer's argument. So if only 18% prefer an environment with a more formal dress code, perhaps the author's argument has merit, right? Although the author does even mention that some professions must have rigid dress codes, such as police, firemen, that sort of thing. So that's in our passage. Trust me, I read it. All right, let's look at 18. All right, which choice most effectively introduces the main idea of the paragraph? I'm going to read the sentence as written. In addition to making companies more appealing to potential employees, dressing casually can also be a fun way to express one's individuality. All right, so this is a very interesting way they phrased answer choice A. Let's look at A. So my question is, does dressing casually make companies more appealing? Because that's what the sentence says. The sentence says dressing casually makes companies more appealing, which makes no sense at all. So obviously it's not A. What should it be? And we're looking for the main idea of this paragraph, which has to do with the morale, the employees' morale. So here is the corrected version. In addition to making companies more appealing to potential employees, instituting a flexible dress code, not dressing casually, instituting, that's why answer choice A was so insane. Instituting a flexible dress code can also improve current employees' morale. Let's look at 19. When the accounting firm Crowe Horwath LLP asked workers what changes they would like to see in the workplace, and workers said that dressing casually would help them most with, being comfortable, being engaged, and being productive. So we have a couple things to do to this one. Let's do 19 first. So it's a punctuation question. Is it a comma? Is it a semicolon? A comma and while? What's going on here? Well, let's start with the semicolons, since we know the rule for semicolons. We know that semicolons can only join two independent clauses, two things that could be sentences. So I'm looking at just answer choice C initially. So if I put workplace here, no and, but if I put a semicolon here, would this work? Would this be two independent clauses? No. So C's out. Can only put a semicolon somewhere where we have two things that could each be sentences and they compare or contrast one another. So semicolon's out. A comma is necessary, but not and. This is just B. Let's look at 20. So the second half of that question, or the second half of that sentence also has an extraneous comma. That comma should not be here, which is B. We're not introducing, what I think that they're trying to trick you with here is that if you're using quotations for the purpose of quoting someone, such as an author, if you're making a citation, you do use a comma typically when you're introducing a citation, but that's not what we have here. We're not introducing something that was spoken. There would be no comma there. We know we can't use a semicolon because we don't have two independent clauses. Let's look at 21. Of course, formal workplace attire is appropriate and even required in some context. So they are testing you on word choice here. What is the formal word choice and what makes the most logical sense within the context of this passage? And it was A, no change. It was fine. 21 is A. So appropriate makes sense. The most sense. Admissible almost works. You can see how workplace attire being admissible almost makes sense. Evidence may be admissible, but your workplace attire is not going to be admitted. So they like to pick words that almost make sense, but your attire would be appropriate. That makes much more sense than if it were admissible or unexceptional or genuine. Those make no sense in the context of that sentence. 22. However, so they will test you on transitional words and phrases. I know we haven't gone over these yet. We will do that in our composition and style lesson that's coming up. So, which is the logical transition here? We don't need an adversarial transition, however, or conversely, those are adversarial transitions. We just need a nice additive transition. We're just adding something. Furthermore, we're just adding some additional information. Furthermore, in certain occupations, such as law enforcement, uniforms without personal embellishments are still necessary. So we're not making a concession. We're not moving in the opposite direction. An adversarial transition would make no sense here. Just a nice additive transition, such as furthermore. 23. Okay, so we are on to the next passage now. This next passage is called The Filtered Net. I'm going to read the first sentence, question 23. Many search engines collect data from users such as their locations and search histories, comma. They use what they gather to filter search results. So even though we put a comma here, even though we put a comma here, it's still a run-on. Now it's just a comma splice run-on, but it's still a run-on. Commas are not strong enough to join two independent clauses. They just can't do it. They're not powerful enough. We can use a comma and a conjunction and, though. I'm going to try that. Many search engines collect data from users, such as their locations and search histories, comma, and use what they gather to filter search results. So we can use a comma and a conjunction there to join those clauses. Let's look at 24. This invisible customization may create what media CEO Eli Pariser has termed a filter bubble, a biased worldview that is reinforced when it is consistently confirmed rather than challenged. So it's another word choice question. What would be what would be the most logical word here? Are we enlarging a worldview? Are we defending a worldview? Emphasizing a worldview? No, we are reinforcing the worldview. That makes the most sense in the context of the sentence. The filter bubble creates a closed circuit kind of, and then we're back to where we started. Such as if we started here, and we went to go search for a term, perhaps we're searching for gun control, but our search engine already knows that we don't like gun control, so it's going to bring us right back to where we started, our initial belief. That's sort of what this passage is about. So they reinforce your previous search engine information affects the new searches. That's the idea of this passage. 25. All right, it is important, especially with regard to political issues, that search engines make their filtering practices explicit. When search engines make them explicit, users can be aware of potential biases. So we just want to combine these sentences at the underlined portion. So, you know, I am going to try. I mean, I'm going to utilize my count the number of words strategy because some of them are so obviously incorrect that I think this will help. But let's see if the most concise answer choice was correct or not. So let's look at answer choice D. This was 8 words, the wordy answer choice. B is also fairly wordy, 6 words. Answer choices A and C are shorter. So answer choice A is 2 words. Answer choice C is 3 words long. So I will start with answer choice A, but it may not be correct. Let's try it. It is important, especially with regard to political issues, that search engines make their filtering practices explicit, whereas search engines make them explicit. So it's still a run-on. Even though we put a comma in there, it's still a run-on. It's now a comma splice run-on. So answer choice A is out. So even though it's the shortest answer choice, 3, the answer choice that was 1 word longer, is the correct answer choice. This is not a run-on. I'm going to read this. So we can use a coordinating conjunction so to connect these sentences. That's this coordinating conjunction so right there. I'm going to try it. It is important, especially with regard to political issues, that search engines make their filtering practices explicit so that users can be aware of potential biases. All right, so that was 25 with C. Let's look at 26. When search engines make them explicit, users can be aware of potential biases when making important decisions, especially when those decisions are shared with friends and family members on social media. We want to set the main argument of the passage, which is not about family members on social media. What is the main argument of the passage? Would it be that those decisions have long-term effects that are not easy to measure? I'm going to say that's extremely vague. What is the main point of this passage? It's C. So, when search engines make them explicit, users can be aware of potential biases when making important decisions, especially when those decisions impact civic duties such as candidate selection and voter opinion, which is what the following paragraph will start to talk about. For 27, we're on to the next paragraph. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filtered results, comma, can lead to political biases. Let me read that, because maybe you didn't notice for 27 that was a stutter. Answer choice A is a stutter. Well, what do I mean by that? A comma is a brief pause in a sentence. Let me exaggerate that pause, and you'll hear the stutter in this sentence. For 23, many search engines collect data from users, such as their locations and search histories. They use whatever they gather. Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong question here. Sorry. I'm on 27. Whoops. Here we go. Let me try that again. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filtered results, comma, can lead to political biases. All right, I read a previous sentence. Sorry. I'm trying to exaggerate this comma here to make the stutter I was talking about. Sorry. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filtered results can lead to political biases. That's the stutter I was trying to put in there. So putting a pause there would make no sense. This one's just no punctuation. So read the commas. That's all I'm trying to state here. Read them into your sentence. If there's no pause there, answer choice C. Look at answer choice C. Multiple stutters. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filtered results can lead to political biases. So that would be 2 stutters. Just be aware you can read the commas. Put a pause there, an unnaturally long pause. It shouldn't work. All right, let's look at 28. All right, 28 says, participants whose searches favored a given candidate was 12% more likely. So they are testing you on subject, verb, agreement. Our subject are participants. So participants are plural. So participants were 12% more likely to report something. So plural subjects take plural verb forms. Remember that. Let's look at 29. While there is no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew the results in favor of certain candidates or positions, filters based on users' browsing histories could produce similarly slanted results. All right, so we have 2 questions for this sentence. Let's start with 29. It looks like they're testing us on commas, but also perhaps transitions would however fit here. I'm going to count the number of words. Answer choice D was 2 words. Answer choice B was 2 words. Answer choices A and C were 1 word, but we did need that comma, which was 29A, no change. So that comma is necessary. While there's no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew the results in favor of certain candidates or positions, comma. So we need that comma because we're introducing a clause with this while. That's why we need the comma. And then the second question, filters based on user singular, user possessive, singular, browsing history possessive. That's really weird. A is out. So we are talking about many users. So an apostrophe after the S. And we're not giving possession to their histories. We're just plural noun histories. So possessive users, multiple with plural histories, which is D. I'm going to read that. While there's no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew the results in favor of certain candidates or positions, filters based on users, plural, browsing histories could produce similarly slanted results. So make sure you know how possession works, especially if you have plural possession. Let's look at 31. Okay. So it says, this possibility is especially troubling because most users think their searches display the full spectrum of perspectives on an issue. It says, which choice provides the best transition from the previous paragraph to the information that follows? Well, what's the information that follows? I'm just going to highlight it. It's this stuff. The vast majority of participants in the experiment, 99.3%, did not recognize their bias. So we want to set up that information. So it is troubling. A, no change does set up that information. It is especially troubling. We're not contradicting that idea. Unaffected is incorrect. And we're not talking about the search engine designers. We're talking about the search engine users. So that one was A, no change. 32, politicians hope to counteract this, A 2012 survey from the Pew Research Center indicated that 66% of respondents believed that results obtained through a search engine represent all available information rather than a personalized selection. So do politicians hope to counteract this? Do we have any evidence of that? No. Are there mitigating factors that the passage mentions? No. Was it subsequently reversed? No. C, this finding was by no means atypical. Here's an example of a similar finding. A 2012 survey from the Pew Research Center indicated that 66% of respondents believed this. So 99.3% is huge. 66% is huge. So I'm going to say that that is the best evidence for 32. That is the answer choice C. Let's look at 33. If search engines publish this information, M dash, by displaying a warning that results are selected based on user preferences, comma, for example, M dash, users would be better able to read political coverage online with an appropriately critical eye and thus base their political beliefs on a fuller range of information. So it says, the writer is considering deleting the underlined phrase, adjusting the punctuation as needed, should the phrase be kept or deleted. So we have to figure out, should this be kept or deleted? If search engines publish this information by displaying a warning label, so should this information be kept or deleted? It should be kept, but we have to figure out, is it A or B? So does it introduce an additional point about filtered bubbles that is developed in the paragraph? Does this introduce an additional point? No. It should rather be kept because it offers the potential solution. What's the potential solution? A warning label. So a warning label would be a potential solution. That's the correct answer. The potential solution in the passage they were asking you about is right here. Displaying a warning is a potential solution to the problem. So that should be kept for that reason. Coming up to the end of this passage. Oh, yeah, that was the end of this passage. All right, here's the last one. All right, so it says, Oglala Lakota art gets rolling. All right, let's read the first one. A 2015 study led by First Peoples Fund, an organization dedicated to supporting indigenous artists, revealed that roughly 4 out of 10 households on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota had home businesses centered on arts or handicrafts. All right. Okay, so they're testing us on punctuation. They're testing us on colons. They're testing us on M dashes, and they're testing us on commas. Do we need a comma here? So I know this is the thing that I botched a minute ago. I was trying to say that we could, let's do it again. We can offset parenthetical information in 3 ways in English. Parentheses, commas, or those M dashes. This is most intensive. All right, so this is actually one of those questions. Okay, so what do we have? A 2015 study led by First Peoples Fund. There's our first comma. That's this comma. An organization dedicated to supporting indigenous artists, comma. That's this comma, which is this comma. Answer choice D. So we can offset that parenthetical information with 2 commas. We can't use the M dash. Why? Because there's not an M dash right there. If there were, we could, but there's not, so we can't. And we can't use a colon either. So if you open it with a comma, you can close it with a comma, which is D. For 34. 35. Which choice provides the most effective transition from the previous sentence to the information that follows in this sentence? All right. So regardless of these discoveries, First People's Fund worked with a group of organizations and supporters to implement a plan for strengthening the creative economy of the reservation. So I doubt we're going to disregard those discoveries. A is out. It's just C. In light of that study, in light of the study's results, First People Fund worked with a group of organizations and supporters to implement a plan for strengthening the creative economy of the reservation. So that provides the best transition from the previous sentence and introduces the information in the current sentence. We are not trying to disregard everything, right? That would make no sense. So in light of that study, makes sense. Let's look at 36. The outcome of the organization's combined efforts have been Rolling Res Arts, a bus that would serve as a mobile space to support artistic collaboration and forge critical partnerships with local financial institutions. All right, so let's look at 36. So it's just subject-verb agreement. So a subject must agree with its verb and number. Well, what's the subject? It's this outcome. We're going to highlight it. So the outcome was. The outcome, singular, not were. The outcome was Rolling Res Arts. So subjects must agree with their verbs and number. Outcome is singular. So we have to use a singular verb form, was. Past tense. And we are in past tense, by the way, simple past. All right, 37. Here's the second half of that. Which best states one of the main points of the passage? Was it these financial institutions? Was that the main point of the passage? The main point of the passage was about creating new commercial opportunities for the artists, not for the financial institutions. We care more about, do you agree that we care more about the Lakota people than we would randomly care about ambiguous financial institutions? So that's definitely out. Yeah, it creates more opportunities for the artists. We care about the artists, not the local financial institutions. Okay, now we're moving on to 38. Donald Montello, a 2014 inductee into the South Dakota Hall of Fame, was selected to give the bus a distinctive appearance. So that may be a true statement. That could be an inductee into the South Dakota Hall of Fame. That doesn't matter. We need this. We need which choice gives information about Montello, that best supports the paragraph discussion. Do we care that he is a Hall of Famer? No, that lacks relevance. But what does the paragraph discuss? This. We need to introduce the idea that Montello is a practitioner of ledger art. Otherwise, it would be very strange to suddenly talk about, I'm going to try to find it, ledger art. Do you see how we can't talk about this yet? It's too soon if we don't introduce it here, and we just did. So we'll put this here. Now we can talk about the ledger art. Now it's no longer too soon to be talking about this ledger art. We've introduced it. We know of it. Now we can talk about it. So that introduces information that is important to the paragraph. We need it. 39. That was that 39? That was 38, sorry. Okay, so now we're on 39. So now we are combining these two sentences. I'm going to read these sentences. He created a lavish design for the bus. This design, intended for the sides of the bus, has vivid pictograms of running buffalo inspired by the narrative scenes of ledger art. Which choice most effectively combines the sentences at the underlined portion? I'm curious if anyone did the tedious thing. Did anyone count the words? I did. Answer choice D was 15 words long. Answer choice C was 13 words long and contains a stutter. Answer choice A was 13 words long. And answer choice B was 11 words long. Count the number of words. Wordy answer choices are often incorrect answer choices. They often contain stutters. I'm going to read the stutters. Read the commas. Look for stutters. I'm going to exaggerate these commas for answer choice C. Let's see it. Let's exaggerate the stutters. He created a lavish design for the bus's sides, and this design featured running buffalo in vivid photographic form. Suggested that's 3 stutters. It's out. Read the stutters. Yeah, and start with the concise answer choice. I'm not saying that it's always the shortest answer choice, but let's just say 90% of the time, because even what we've done today, it seems like about 90% of the time, it's the shorter answer choices. All right, let's look at 40. This looks like it's a pronoun question. I see some pronouns. All right, I'm going to read the sentence as written. After Montelot produced drawings of the design, an Oglala Lakota graphic artist adapted them to fit the bus, helping transform its exterior into a brilliant traveling canvas. So they're testing you on pronoun antecedent agreement. Can we use the pronoun its to refer back to, what would our antecedent be? Well, the antecedent would have to be the bus. So can I use a singular possessive pronoun we reserve for things like buses to refer back to bus? Yes, I can. So that one was a no change. I'm going to reread it one more time. After Montelot produced drawings of the design, an Oglala Lakota graphic artist adapted them to fit the bus, helping transform its exterior, the bus's exterior, it makes perfect sense, into a brilliant traveling canvas. So they will test you on pronouns, pronoun antecedent agreement, subject-verb agreement. 41. Just a couple more questions here. I'm going to read this sentence. The bus's versatile interior allows artists to work together on projects, study with mentors, and even set up bank accounts to help grow their art as a business. The bus also hosts a gift shop whose manager buys works on site to sell elsewhere along the bus's travels, enhancing artists' ability to benefit financially from their art. So they are testing you on word choice, which is the most effective word choice here, which makes the most logical sense. Some of these will sound overly flowery and incorrect. Let's toss them out. Embellishing or exaggerating the artist, these make no sense and sound flowery. They sound informal. Flowery, informal. What's the formal? Exalting, doesn't make much sense. The formal answer choice is just a no change. This would enhance the artist's ability to benefit financially from their art. A no change, every now and then, is the right answer. So just be aware that it is an option. I know that it becomes, the tendency is to correct these things. It looks like every single one is wrong, but every now and then a no change is correct, and here it was. 42. Local artist and rancher, comma, Tony Richards. I think I'm missing a comma. What am I missing? No commas. This is too many commas right there. This should be no commas, B. Let me read that again. Local artist and rancher, Tony Richards. We don't need to introduce him with a comma. He can just come right in here. So local artist and rancher Tony Richards used to have to drive more than an hour to reach a local cultural center. We don't need a comma. You can't just throw in a comma everywhere. Let's look at 43. Here's a semicolon. Wonder if that College Board's favorite punctuation. Here it is. Well, I think I must have seen 20 semicolons today. It's crazy. While the organizations behind the project ultimately aim to open a permanent art space and art gallery on the reservation to serve as a fixed cultural hub, the art in motion of Rolling Res Arts will continue. All right, so can we put a semicolon there? Is what I'm about to read here a sentence? Is this a sentence? The art in motion of Rolling Res Arts will continue. Yes. However, is the first part of that sentence? It has to be both. Is this first part a sentence? Let's read it. This has to be a complete thought for this to work. While the organizations behind the project ultimately aim to open a permanent art space and gallery on the reservation to serve as a fixed cultural hub. That's a fragment. That's a fragment. So because we don't have two independent clauses, we can't use a semicolon. Just can't. It's out. What can we use? Well, I'm also gonna count the words too. Let's do that too. So that was one word, but it doesn't work. This is 3 words. This is 2 words. This is 1 word. It's probably D. And a comma can go there because a comma, we would need a comma because of this while. So because of this clause, we're introducing a clause with this while. We will eventually need the comma to close it. And you can count the number of words, and you can realize that the answer choices B and C are wordy. All right, so that one was D, and here's we did need a comma there because of this while. 44. Here's the last question for the writing passage. The writer wants to incorporate a direct quotation into a conclusion that summarizes and reflects upon the main idea of the passage. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? I'm going to read the wrong answer choice, which is as written. As Warren Gus Yellowhair, an artist trainer for First Peoples Fund, said, what I do is contact some of the established artists and utilize some of their skills. That does not summarize and reflect on the main idea of the passage in a very good way, but C does. This is the correct answer choice. Brandy McDonald, the former program manager of First Peoples Fund, said, Rolling Res Arts provides access to capital and addresses other needs in the community as it passes through the space where the community resides, which is beautiful to think about. So that was the writing passage. We finished that section. Are we going to do another one?
Math, yeah.
The long math.
Yeah.
All right, we are doing math calculator permitted, which begins right about here. All right, that looks like that's your first question.
You're the calculator. You need it, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I'm back with section 4. And like I said, you can sort of fast forward if you need to, but if you think going through the whole thing would be great, whatever section you need to go over, that would be helpful. So let's look at number 1. How many samples have a pH of 7.4 or greater? So that would be this section and this one, which is 7, which is answer choice D. Thank you, College Board, for 10 points. Number 2, in 2015, the city of Miami had a population of 441 people in an area of 36 square miles. So we want the population density. So remember our I love density. So density is, well, in this case, mass over volume, but here it's going to be the number of people And you can use a calculator on this, over 36 miles to find people per mile. And then that will be answer choice B when you put it through the calculator. So totally good to use the calculator on that one. Number 3, up here we go. So we have box and whisker plots. You might have known them. So we want, the Metropolitan Museum of Arts has plates on display from the Roman Empire and ancient Greece. The box plots shown summarize the distribution of the diameters in centimeters of all the museum's plates from each region. How does the median diameter of the plates from the Roman Empire, which is the median is right here, compare to the ancient Greek Empire? So you can sort of see the Roman Empire is less than the Greek, which is answer choice A. So far, not so bad. Let's go on to 4. The combustion of glucose releases energy. The ratio of glucose to kilocalories of energy is 12 to 45. How many grams of glucose must be combined to provide 85.5 kilocalories of energy? Okay, so we know that we use our little ratio formula, glucose to kilograms, so we don't make a mistake. So we have glucose is 12 to 45 kilograms. We want to get 85.5 kilograms, so we put that in the denominator.
You're all right, but it's kilocalories, not
Oh, kilocalories. Sorry.
mass, all right.
Thank you. So then we're just going to cross multiply. 12, you can use a calculator for this, divided by 45. And when you put that in a calculator, you'll get answers choice C. So far, so good. Number 5. The function f is defined by f of x equals x squared minus 7. We just put 3 in for x squared. 9 minus 7 will just be 2. So 6. Sort of a crazy one. The probability of an unfair coin landing heads up is 0.6. A student tossed these coin into the air 9 times. It landed tail side up 5 times and head side up 4 times. What's the probability that the coin will land head side up on the 10th toss? Well, this is an independent thing, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you could throw it 1,000 times.
Yeah, you could throw it 1,000 times. It'll still be 0.6. You might have done probability. So this one is a statistics question. 2 histograms show the distribution of data set A and data set B, respectively. Data set B is the result of moving the outlier from data set A. Which of the following is true about the means? Well, we can fly like an eagle above the question. We do not need to calculate this means. We know that this average has to be higher than this average because it contains one number between 60 and 70. So that will say the answer for this one will then be B. The mean, and we don't have to calculate all the mean, obviously. It doesn't pay to do that because we want to keep moving. Okay, now we're going to do this question. How am I? I guess, hey, I don't know, drove a car from West Union, Minnesota through North Dakota to Miles City, Montana. The total distance she traveled through each state is shown in the figure. How many miles had Jaime driven 3 hours after she started driving? Well, we have the formula. So we just put D equals 60 times 3 hours. Pretty easy, 180. When these problems come in twos, usually the second one is harder. What interval represents all the values of t during which, hey, I don't know, drove in North Dakota. So right here, she drives up to 2 hours here, 60 divided into 120. Then it's a 6 hours, she's in North Dakota, and then the end thing is 2. So she's going between 2 and 8. 2 plus 6 is 8, which is answer choice B. So number 10, the graph shows a number of algae cells grown during an experiment in millions of cells per milliliter of water, D days after the start of an experiment. Between which 2 days was the growth rate the greatest? So we want the steepest slope. So the steepest slope will be right here, which is between 5 and 6. So that's answer choice B. Moving along, a local restaurant gives teachers a discount of 20% on all their meals. So if a teacher paid $14 for a meal, they would pay 0.8 of the cost of the meal, call it C. So then we just divide by 0.80, and so the normal cost of the meal would have been $17.50. Just putting this in the calculator. You could have also tried these answers and taken 0.8 times these and see which one would give the 14. Okay, 12 is down here. The frequency table above shows the distribution of the actual number of fluid ounces of water into a random sample of 80 20-ounce bottles of water. Bottles are only sold if they contain at least 19.8, but no more than 20.2. So they have to be in this realm right here. How many of the 16,000 bottles cannot be sold? Well, of these 20, of the 80 we've got, we have, how many can't be sold? 1 here and 1 here. So that's 2 over 80. So these are the can't be sold to the total. So that will equal, we have 16,000 bottles. Cross multiplying, let's see, 32,000 divided by 80. Looks like it's going to be 400 bottles. Okay, now we're on to 13, which is up here. For the linear function f, the table shows several values of x and the corresponding values of f of x. What is the y-intercept? Well, we know the y-intercept is where x is 0. So let's first calculate the slope of this graph. So that's going to be, let's just say, we're going to pick points minus 2, 8, and 3, minus 7. So we'll have 8 minus a minus 7 over minus 2 minus 3, which is 15 over a negative 5. So the slope is a minus 3. So to get the b value, we just put in, let's put in this value into, so we know we have y equals negative 3x plus b. We're trying to get the b. So we put 8 in for y. So 8 equals 6 plus b. So B is going to be 2. Thank you, College Board, for 10 points. Okay, moving on to 14. This one is a little crazy. Both Jim and I thought this. When a buffet charges $12 per meal, the number of meals it sells per day is 400. For each of the following, for each 50-cent increase in the meal, what is the number of meals sold goes down by 10. what is the price per meal that results in the greatest sales in dollars from meals each day? So basically, we have to try the choices because we don't want to go into finding a graph. So initially, you can see it's 400 times 12. The restaurant at $12 would be making, let's see, 48. What is 12 times 400, Jim? Is it 48,000?
Yeah, 4,800. 12 times 400?
Yeah.
Yeah, just 4,800.
Sorry. Should have caught that. 4,800. Okay, so now we're going to try 16. I know this is just a pain. 16 times, it's 50 cents increase added to the meal. So that's $4 increase, but it's
That's 8 increases.
Eight increases. So we're going to take away 80 meals, so it'll be 320 times 16. What's that, Jim?
That is 51.20.
Okay, so that's more. So then we'll try $20, which we're going up.
Yeah, you didn't even need to try 12 because that's not an option, I guess.
Right, I know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
So then $20, that's $8 increase, which is 1,660 decrease. So that would be, let's see, 400 minus 160. So that's 240 times 20. What's that, Jim?
4,800.
So we're going down. We'll try these two, but it looks like this is our winner. Let's just try these two to be, so 12. $24 is 12 more, which means 240 decrease in the number of meals sold, right?
Yeah. So that's 160.
So that's 160 times 24.
Which is 3,840.
So the restaurant's making less money. $28 is 16 more, which would be 320. So that means we're only selling how many meals?
You're taking off 320.
Right. So that's 80 meals
Yeah.
only.
Yeah.
So that's way low.
80
Right.
times 28 is 2,240.
So a little involved, but we locked in on A. Okay, 15. Thank goodness this one's a little bit easier. The scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables, x and y. A line of best fit is also shown. What is an equation of the line of best fit? We know it's y equals mx plus b, and the b is right here, which is 3 point something. I can just look at the choices and see it's probably going to be a plus 3.7 for the b. Sorry, whoops. So it's going to be A. And I'm not even going to take time to find the slope because I got the Y-intercept and it's confirmed right there. So 16.
Wait, no, but you got 2 of those.
Then I would have to get the slope.
Yeah, don't you?
No.
C's got 3.7. Are you just saying because you know it's not negative?
Yeah, because I know it's not negative.
Right.
So that's why it can't be that one. So let's go to 16. So we have this function and it has a slope of 3. So I'm gonna, more slope questions are all over the test. So I have to get the b again. So I'm gonna put a slope of 3 in. My x is 2, my y is 10. So not so bad. 10 equals 6 plus b. B is going to be 4. So 3x plus 4 is answer choice D. 17. 7x plus 21 is a minus 2. Always look at the prompt. X plus 3. Looks like I'm dividing everything by 7, right? So right away I can see the answer is a negative 2/7. So we have a system. But look at this. Train yourself to look at the prompt. So we have 3x plus y. So if I add this system, I get 3x plus y equals 10 plus 5 or 15. And I did that in under 10 seconds. So 19 is down here. So if it's going up by a percent every time, that's got to be increasing exponential. And we'll be doing that in the function lesson. So 20, we have 11 points, and line of best fit. For how many data points is the y value predicted by the line of best fit greater than the actual y value? So we want these guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is answer choice A. 21. Dana is riding in a 100-mile-long bicycle race. The function f is defined by f of x equals 100 minus 18x. So what does this actually mean? It means after 2 hours, because this is our rate. So let's see, after 2 hours, so 100 minus 36 would be 64 miles left to go. So we sort of looked at this ahead of time. So 2 hours after she starts running the race, she has 64 miles remaining. 22. Triangle ABC and DEF each have an angle 29 and an angle of 54, which proves congruency. So if they're congruent, we have to have everything the same, the angles and the sides. So if we were doing similar, we don't have to worry about that, but for congruent, that means equal. So we need to know that BC is equal to EF. Whoops. For it to be congruent. Okay, 23. So from the absolute value lesson, the absolute value of anything can never be negative, so that will be 0 solutions. So we're on to 24. The solutions to the quadratic equation above are A and B. So what is the value of the two solutions? So let's go to the quadratic formula. So A is 3, B is 1, C is a minus 2. So we'll just put it in the quadratic formula. Minus 1 minus 4 times 3 times a minus 2 all over 2A. So here we don't really have to worry about this because we want the two solutions. We want the positive solution, which will be minus 1 over 6, plus this. I'm just going to call it a mess. Math teachers will be so mad at me. And then we have minus 1/6 minus the mess. So we just have a minus 1/6 plus a minus 1/6, which is a minus 2 over 6, which will be a minus 1/3. So a geometry question. In the figure above, point 0 is the center of the circle. So the area of the region. So we know this is the area and 18 is the square. So we need to get the perimeter of the square. So we know the area of the square is s squared. So we have to take the square root of 18 and simplify it. So from our radical lesson, we have 9 times 2, so we can take out a pair of 3's. So one side of the square is 3 square roots of 2, but we need 4 of those to go all the way around the square. And so the perimeter of this square will be 12 square roots of 2. So now we're on to 26. This is one where I would just pick a number because there's a lot of algebra involved. So let's just say x is 1. So here we're going to get 1 minus 8 plus 16. So 17 minus 8 is just 9. So we need to get a 9 out of these two guys. Let's try this one. 1 plus 2. So this will be 3 squared times a minus 1 squared, which is a plus 1, so 1 works. Let's try 2. So we have 1 squared minus 4, then square it. 1 minus 4 is a negative 3, and we square it, we get 9. So it's both 1 and 2. So now we're going on to 27, which we cover in the function lesson. So the initial investment is $500, which is here. Then we're going up every year 2.5%. So we drop the percent and move over 2 places. So we're going to get 0.025, but we want all the money X years, so we want a 1 before that. So that looks a lot like B. And after we do the function lesson, that will be very easy to spot. This one, how many solutions? Well, sort of looks like we're multiplying by the same factor, which is a minus 12 each time, right? Because 9 times a minus 12 will get us a minus 108. So it's the same line. So that'll be infinitely many solutions. So that's for 28. Then we're going to 29. This one was a little hard. I'm going to ask Jim for a little help on this. Bridges have spaces. So if you're an engineer, it allows for expansion and contraction caused by the temperature. The space is known as the gap width. The size of the gap, so the width is a function of the temperature for a certain bridge. The gap width is 2.875 inches at 40 degrees and 1.875 inches at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So we know we have to use the slope formula. So at 40 degrees, because the temperature is the control. And so then at 100 degrees, the gap is 1.875. So if we put that in the slope formula, we'll get, basically, we'll just get a 1 here over a minus, so this is 60 degrees.
Yeah, that's right. Negative
So,
160.
yeah, so we know it has to be A and B. And then I would just figure out.
I found out what B was. You can put all the points in.
You could put all the points and find B out, but
and it's A. A is the right one.
obviously it's going to be a plus because it doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
To have a negative there. But you could put in the points like Jim didn't find B. And 30. So we're increasing the books by 30%. So if there's X books, that's 1X, plus we're increasing by a 0.3X. So that's not so bad for a really hard one. The answer will be C. And now, are we going on to the grid-ins? Yes. Okay. 31. In a survey of 240 television viewers, 3/5 said they like comedies, and 1/15 said they did not respond. Because we have 3 categories. We have like, we have do not like, and did not respond. So if we have 3/5 plus 1/15, that would mean if we're going to add those 2 fractions, multiply this by, let's see, we need to get a 15 here, so this will be, multiply this by 3. So that'll be 10/15 we've already figured out, have indicated their views. And that's going to be divided by 5. That's going to be 2/3 we know their views. So we have 1/3 of 240 who don't like the comedies, and that would be
80.
80. Yes, sorry. Okay, 32. The x-coordinate of the y-intercept.
So the y.
We want to get the y-intercept, right? So basically, we know to get the y-intercept, we need x is 0. So we just put in 0 here. Any number to the 0 power is 1. And so the answer will be 10. 33, we're up to a triangle. So they're similar. And we need to get the cosine, which we know from SOHCAHTOA is adjacent over hypotenuse. So even they're asking for the cosine of f, that's just like the cosine of c. We don't have to worry about it. So we want adjacent, which is 24, over the hypotenuse, which is 30, which when we divide by 6 will be 4/5. And obviously, you could always put in 0.8. Okay, 34. Oh, a little bit of a... We got to get the median number for all these.
They didn't give it to you in a good order either.
Right, so it's all... So we have to...
Do you want me to read you the order so you have it?
Yeah, so let's put the order in.
204,
Mm-hmm.
536, 575, 628, 863, 958, 1197, 1904, 3087.
So that's the time consumingness
I know.
of this.
That's like half the time of the problem.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we need the middle number. We need 4 here and 4 here. So it pretty much looks like it's going to be 863. Thanks, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way around. Don't try to do it in your head because it'll just take too much time. Okay, so you just have to spend the time to put it in order. Line L is shown in the XY plane, and the points with coordinates 2, C is on line L. What is the value of C? Okay, so we know we have to get the slope formula. Let's do that. And I'm just going to use the intercept. So we have 0, 4, and 5, 0. So the slope will be 4 minus 0 over 0 minus 5, which will be a negative 4/5. And then we're trying to put in 2 for x. And we're trying to well, first we have to get the b, it's just time consuming.
It's just 4. Now you can see the b.
Oh, the b is 4, sorry, yeah. So the value when we put it in, we're going to get a negative 8/5 plus 4. This is a negative 1 3/5. So the answer would be 2 2/5.
The answer was 12/5 or 2.4.
Yeah, 12/5, or if you use a decimal, 2.4. I'm just adding these two numbers, which makes sense. Okay, we're on the last questions here, almost. So, how much does an adult African elephant in the wild in pounds? Well, an African elephant is 2.5. So we're just going to multiply that times 2,000. Not so bad. Big weight, 5,000 pounds. Now this one's, when they do these in 2, they're a little trickier. So based on the table, the typical lifespan of the African elephant in the wild is P% greater than the typical, so we need a typical Asian on the bottom. That's our reference. And we want the amount of the increase or decrease over here. So we want to do, what's the increase between the lifespans? So it's 10, but we have to put it over the typical Asian, and this is where a lot of kids would mess up. And so that would be 1/6, or you could have it as a decimal. And the last one, another more slope craziness. So the table shows several values of x and their corresponding values of f of x. So we need to get y equals mx plus b. So first we have to find our slope. So let's pick 2, 106 and 3, 151. So that'll be 151, 106. So that's 45 over 1 is our slope. So then we have to put in an x and a y to get our b. So we put in, let's just do x is 2, y is 106 at that point. So that'll be 90 plus b. So we just subtract the 90. And so our b is 16. Okay, and so that's the calculator math. And so now, are you going to do the reading, Jim? Or?
Sure.
Okay, so
That's all we have.
he's up for it. So, okay, guys, you're in good hands now.
All right, so now we're going to do the reading test. All right, so the first passage is the literature passage. It's always the literature passage, I've noticed. So this one says it's adapted from Nina Revoir, The Age of Dreaming. The narrator describes acting in silent films in the early 1900s. Moran is the owner of the production company that employs the narrator. So let's look at this passage. Let's look at the first question. All right, so it says the narrator references Jamestown Junction in line 5 in order for what reason? Let's look at this. I'll just highlight this bit. All copies of Jamestown Junction have long been lost, but if the film had survived, and if you could see it, you would notice that during the office scene, the papers on my desk are disturbed by a mysterious breeze. Okay, so why reference Jamestown Junction? What does this do? It showcases the challenges posed by filming in an outdoor setting. So that's the idea of the papers moving this breeze. Since they were filming silent pictures outdoors, even indoor scenes for the lighting. So that's why... Oh, I think I skipped the question. I skipped the first one. Let's look at that one. It's a vocab question. As used in line 2, the word primitive most nearly means what? It is amusing in retrospect to think how primitive our efforts were in those early years. Always read the words back in the sentence, and it should make perfect sense once you find the correct one. All right, so I'm going to try basic. It is amusing in retrospect to think how basic our efforts were in those early years. And it makes perfect sense. If you tried ancient, original, or natural, it would make no sense. Let's try ancient, just for fun. It should make nonsense. It is amusing in retrospect to think how ancient our efforts were in those early years. That's nonsense. So always read the words back in the sentence, and one of them will work, three of them will produce gibberish. Number 3, the passage is written from the perspective of someone who what? Well, it's our narrator, and our narrator, we know, has left stage acting in order to pursue silent films. Let's look at the first sentence. This is a perfect sentence for this one. It was amusing in retrospect to think how primitive our efforts were in those early years, thinking about the early years, and then this mention of Jamestown Junction. It's nostalgia. It's nostalgia about those early experiences, those early films. We don't know, we don't realize any new colleges. We don't see any regrets or the technological developments. No evidence of any of those. Just the nostalgic. Just by looking at the first sentence, you can see him reminiscing. All right, let's look at 4. It can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that as a young man, the narrator attributed his employment in films to what? It's a lucky happenstance. And now for question 5, we have to find the part. Where does our author say that it was all luck? It was attributed to luck. I'm going to highlight the lines. That happens right here in the passage. So just some reading comprehension. Could you remember where you read this in the passage? We were working, yes, but it felt like play. And it was hard to comprehend the tremendous good fortune that had suddenly befallen me. So that's the lucky happenstance. Tremendous good fortune sounds like lucky happenstance to me. So that was, those lines I read were lines 24 through 26. The lucky happenstance. All right, let's look at 6. As used in line 35, convey means what? Always read the words back in the sentence. Let's look at line 35. There's no audience to see you, she said one day in Japanese. As I gestured expansively, big, expansive, to convey my anguish at the death of one of my fellow soldiers. So we just got to figure out what convey means in the context of this sentence. They give us some options. Let's try an option. Let's try communicate. Does convey mean to communicate? Just going to read it back in the sentence. There is no audience to see you, she said one day in Japanese, as I gestured expansively to communicate my anguish at the death of one of my fellow soldiers. Well, that made perfect sense because it's the right answer. Let's try a wrong answer. Let's try experience. Let's just see it. It should make gibberish. I'm just going to read this word experience in for convey. See what happens. There's no audience to see you, she said one day in Japanese, as I gestured expansively to experience my anguish at the death. That makes no sense. So always read the words back in the sentence. You can even check to make sure you have the right answer by trying the wrong ones. It should just produce gibberish. And it did. 7. Based on the passage, in what way does Hanako most directly influence the narrator's development? So her interaction with the narrator seems formative for sure, because she shares lessons learned from having made the same career shift that he is making, Now we have to find that evidence in the passage. So it's reading comprehension. We have to find physically in the passage, where does the author mention this? And it happens in line 61 to 63. I'm going to highlight this part. Here's where she reveals that she has made the same transition that he's making. Hanako Minatoya was one of the few who was equally accomplished in both realms, both stage acting and silent films. So she had made the transition that our narrator is making. So that was number 7. Number 8, where was that evidence? I showed you those lines. They were just 61 to 63, where we learned that she has done stage productions as well as silent films. We are on 9. The passage indicates that when Hanako criticizes a well-known actor, the narrator... I'm going to read this bit because it is interesting. I'm going to try to find this part where it's towards the end, right here. This paragraph right here. Just going to read from this paragraph. One day in our walk, we were discussing a well-known actor, and Hanako surprised me by her reaction to his name. He is nothing but a face for the fan magazine, she said dismissively. He is not a genuine actor. And here's the interesting part. The narrator says, "What do you mean?" Although he does not disagree. Well, why is our narrator behaving in that way? What does that mean? Well, it must mean that he agrees with Hanako that this person is a poor actor, but is waiting for his explanation of why. So 9 was B. Not too bad if you read the passage. Just some reading comprehension. Can you maintain that information until you can answer some questions about these characters? It can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that Hanako believes that an actor's merit depends on what? This is another interesting part towards the end of the passage. Well, what does it depend on? There must be substance. You must possess something internally to perform in its talent. So how do we distill all of that down into an answer choice? The best answer choice for that would be B. The best way to describe talent and an actor's ability to portray a character would be the depth of the actor's own feelings and perceptions, which show that some people have it and some people don't, according to Hanako. So that one was C. All right, no, sorry, that one was B. And now we are on to the next passage. So that was a literature passage. They always start with a literature passage. I'm not sure why, but that was that one. And now we are on to a science passage. All right, so here we have an experiment. I'm going to read this into the introduction here. So this is from Small News Outlets Influence Us More Than We Think, from 2017 by American Association for the Advancement of Science. And let's just jump right to the first question, which is question 11. The main purpose of the passage is what? So, does the passage summarize an open question with respect to, I don't even know what question that would be, because it's wrong, the wrong answer. Does it summarize an open question with respect to social media and propose a study to examine the question in greater depth? No, they don't just propose a study, they performed a study. And I don't know what the open question would be, and it's not a summary. So 11A is way out. All right, let's look at B. Does it introduce a common misunderstanding about mainstream media outlets and describe a study that challenges that I don't even know what misunderstanding that would be. I don't see a misunderstanding. Are we C, outlining a study that compares trends in social media use among different demographic groups? Which demographics? African Americans, Latinos, men, women. I don't know even what demographic groups that would refer to because the passage does not mention demographics. It's out. It's just D. So the passage describes a study's novel or new, just means new way of assessing the impact of news media on public opinion and report the findings of that study. So if you see any, misunderstandings or demographics that are not in your passage, just cross them off. They're the wrong answer choices. All right, let's look at 12. As used in line 4, interfere with most nearly means what? I am just going to read the words back in the sentence. Let's try oppose for line 4. All right, here's 4. And what word am I looking for? Interfere with. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to read in various words for these 2 words. Let's try oppose. Assessing the influence of news media is tricky. Researchers can't peer into voting booths or people's living rooms, and news organizations aren't typically willing to have outsiders oppose their content. That makes no sense. Let's try. Let's try prevent. Okay, news organizations aren't typically willing to have outsiders prevent their content. That makes no sense. Let's try modify. Perhaps this makes sense. News organizations aren't typically willing to have outsiders modify their content. That is the correct answer because that's exactly what the scientists did. They modified the news media content in this experiment. So that one was C. Which choice best supports the idea that the researchers needed a mechanism to determine whether changes in public opinion were the result of the experimental stories and not some other factor? So they do have a control. Let's find that part. So they have to figure out, was it the experimental change that we made or some other factor? How do they do that? Typically we do that in science with what's known as a control group. So I'm going to try to find that part of the passage, which is right over here. They manipulated the type of news stories run and then assigned a treatment week when the stories would run and a control week when they wouldn't. So that's how they accounted for other factors. They have a control. So that was D, lines 12 to 16. So that's the mechanism to determine whether it's the thing we're studying or not, the change. We have a control group. According to the passage, the opinion articles used in the study had what impact on the opinions of Twitter users? So the opinion articles used in the passage had what impact on the Twitter users? I'm just going to read briefly from the passage here. What effect could that have on Twitter users? How about right about right here maybe? What's more, the cluster of stories swayed people's opinion by 2.3% in the ideological direction of opinion articles, suggesting that news media might in some cases change people's beliefs, which would be B. Twitter users' opinions changed somewhat toward favoring the article's position in the policy area. In this case, in the example they gave us, by about 2.3% in the direction of the opinion. All right, let's keep going. Now we are on to question 15. Here's another vocab question. As used in line 15, the word boosted most nearly means what? I am going to read that line, and I'm also going to change boosted to some of those other options, see what works. The team repeated the experiment 35 times and observed that stories boosted posting by men and women alike. So stories boosted posting by men and women alike. Stories advanced posting by men and women alike. That doesn't make much sense. Let's try raised. The team repeated the experiment 35 times and observed that stories raised posting by men and women alike. So the word raised made perfect sense in the context of that sentence. If I tried supported or improved, you would get gibberish, just as we did with advanced. Always read the words back into the sentence. Doesn't take very long, but you'll immediately know which ones are gibberish and which one's the right answer. or at least you should. If you take the 10 seconds to do that task, you really should. They call these tier 2 words. They're not that difficult. The word boosted, or any of these words, you should be able to define any of these words. They used to have tier 3 words on the SAT. What's a tier 3 word? Supercilious, quixotic, which is in one of these passages. Those are tier 3 words. But you're just on a tier 2 word. The words are relatively easy, such as boost or to raise. That one's not that tricky. Let's try 16. It can reasonably be inferred from the passage that the design of King's team's experiment made it less likely what? So did it make it less likely that Twitter users would read more stories from participating news media outlets than they usually did? I don't even know how Twitter would do that. Or I don't even know how King's experiment would make it so that Twitter users would read more stories from participating news outlets. That we have no indication that they did anything like that. Okay. Do we have any indication that news media outlets... Did King's experiment make it less likely that news media outlets would be able to choose which stories to publish outside of treatment weeks? No. They allowed... The news networks had control of that. That was not accounted for within the experiment. What is accounted for within the experiment is C. Twitter users would realize... So the King's experimental team, they made it less likely that Twitter users would realize that there was something unusual about the media outlet's publication output. Why? Because that would trash the experiment. If the public determined, if Twitter users were able to tell that something fishy is going on with these news networks, the experiment would be over. It's C. So they did account for that, not D. News media, so they didn't make it less likely that news media outlets would run stories on any particular topic for more than 1 week. It's just C. 17. The passage most strongly suggests that which additional study would best help to determine more precisely the extent to which news media outlets shape public opinion in the United States. So they do mention this in the passage. Towards the end of the passage, the authors say, a study that examines how influential news media outlets are to people who do not participate in social media. That's this part of the passage right here. How about this right here? 20% of Americans use Twitter, so the results might not be widely applicable outside of social media. So maybe we want a study of some people who do not use social media, and those are the lines I just read. Lines 70 to 73. Perhaps we should be looking beyond social media, because not everyone uses Twitter. 19. According to the model in Figure 1, the number of Twitter posts on the relevant topics in excess of the average. Can you read a graph? That's all we're doing here. Can you read a graph? So what happens, just looking at this graph, right? Figure 1. So what's up with Figure 1? The number of Twitter posts on the relevant topics in excess of average decrease over time. That's all we're talking about, which is answer choice D for 19. They decrease throughout days 1 through 6. So can you look at a graph? Can you see that we're going down? Not too tricky. 20. Which statement best reflects the second model? The second model is a little different. So this model is a little interesting in that here we have the low influencers. That's a low one. That's an all influencer. And then this one is a high influencers. And then our x-axis is days following publication of experimental news stories. And our y-axis was percent change in number of posts as compared to the average. So I said the low was up here and the high was here. That's important. So let's look at that question. So that graph says, A, On day one following publication of the experimental news stories, Twitter users with high influence showed a lower percent change. That's these guys. In their number of posts on the relevant topic than did those with low influence. Are the low influencers higher? Yep, right there. So can you read a graph? Can you read a line graph? So 20 was answer choice A. Now we're on the next passage. This one is called, "We taught bees to play football so we could learn about their brains." And this was a fascinating science passage. I really enjoyed this one. All right, let's jump into it. Oh, we have a graph. It looks like we have a couple graphs, bar graphs. All right, let's jump into 21. The main idea of the passage is what? They will test you on main ideas at the passage level. So, what is the main idea of the passage? Is it that bees learn by mimicking demonstrated behavior? Well, they do, but that's a minor detail. That's not the main idea of the passage. It's a very minor detail. It's true. We're looking for a main idea. What is this passage mainly about? It's not about that. All right, is it bees? 21. Sorry, is it bees have greater cognitive flexibility than most other insects? Does the passage ever make that claim? Nope. Is the main idea that bees can master simple tasks and then demonstrate them for other bees? No. This is tricky, College Board. Do you see how tricky they are? One word. They changed one word. The main idea of the passage is not that bees can perform simple tasks. Bees can perform complex tasks. They can play football. So C is out. That's how the College Board gets you. They get you with one word, just like that. Tricky, College Board. All right, 21. So bees can learn unfamiliar tasks, complex unfamiliar tasks, and then execute them efficiently. Tricky, College Board. 22. Which choice best describes the overall structure of the passage? So the passage does follow a particular structure. So let's just go through some of these answer choices and just see if we can roll some of them out. Is it A? Does the passage follow the structure of an experiment to test an existing hypothesis? What hypothesis would that be? I don't know. I think we have a new hypothesis. Can bees play football? That hypothesis is revised based on the experiment's results. What revision? And then a new study is proposed. None of those things happened. A is out. Yeah, there's no new study. It was revised how? It's out. All right, do we have an experiment that produces unexpected data? Do we have any unexpected data? An experiment that produces unexpected data about bees is introduced. The source of that data is traced to faulty research. None of that's in our passage. There's no redesigned study. That's not in there. All right, let's look at D. Do we have a criticism about the lack of research on bees? No. Then do we have an experiment proposed in response to that criticism? No. And then do we have a hypothesis for that new experiment? No. All we have is C, a generalization about bees is mentioned. What generalization? This generalization. I'm going to read it. Most people don't often think about bees' brain power. Are bees dumb? Bees are generally regarded as tiny, unthinking machines. Are bees dumb? No, maybe not. But bees have some impressive cognitive capacities. So we start with a preconception, a preconceived notion. Bees, are they intelligent? Do we care? Okay, so that's the generalization. Do people even think about the intelligence of bees? That's a generalization. That generalization is noted, and then we have an experiment where we learn more about bees. And it's quite fascinating. 23, according to the passage, one reason that bees may have mastered tasks such as string pulling. Why did the bees perhaps master string pulling. Well, the passage makes the claim that perhaps it's similar to the normal activity of bees. Perhaps that's normal for bees. In the course of normal bee activity, when they're trying to get pollen, perhaps they pull things. That the idea here is that the motions would be similar to the normal, ordinary behavior of bee. That's why they decided to make the bees push a soccer ball, because that's very, very different than pulling on a string or pulling on something like a bee may normally be required to do if it's getting pollen or whatever. But now it's pushing a ball, which is a more complicated task that a bee really should never do, I would think. All right, let's look at 24. According to the passage, one reason that bees may have mastered tasks such as... Oh, I just did this one. All right, 24, sorry. It can be most reasonably inferred from the passage that some of the bees participating in the initial training activity were what? Were they transfixed by the appearance of the plastic model bee? That's not in the passage. So if you read that in the passage, I'm very concerned for you because it's not in there. All right. Do they mention that the bees participating in the initial training activity could access the sugar without moving the ball? Nope. You wouldn't have much of an experiment if they could do that. They had no prior experience with goal-oriented tasks? Not mentioned. So because that's not mentioned by the passage, it's out. It's just A. Some were unable to solve the task after a single demonstration. That's all we really know from the passage. And now we have to find the evidence. Where does the passage mention that some were able to do it? Some were unable to solve it initially after a single demonstration. And I even see demonstrations, plural, in this answer choice, the right answer choice. So this, you see that single demonstration? I'm seeing the word demonstrations here. Let me just read lines 27 and 29. I know it's the right answer choice, but that's why it's the right answer choice. 27, 29. After several observations, so maybe it took a couple times, each real bee we tested picked up how to solve the task and no longer needed demonstrations. So ultimately, every bee could do it consistently, but perhaps it took a few demonstrations. That's all that they're saying here. So that was answer choice D. Perhaps it took a few demonstrations. 26, based on the results of the ball moving tasks, the authors would most likely agree with which statement? Let's look at answer choice A. Bees learn to master new tasks through the process of trial and error. What trial and error? I don't think that's what the experiments demonstrated. Bees develop complex behaviors by learning them in incremental steps. What steps? Do we have any indication that there are steps? Nope. It's gone. It's out. Bees learn effectively by observing the behaviors of other bees, or bees imitate the actions of other bees and learn by repeating their movements. So this was really hard because there's a distinction between C and D. Look at this closely because we have it down to 50-50, but a mistake here and we lost the question. We just lost 1 point. So even though we rolled two answers out, it's C or D. It's not C and D. It has to be one of these answer choices. So what is most similar to what they're testing in the passage, it's C. It's not bees imitating the actions of other bees and learn by repeating their movements. It's bees learn effectively by observing the behaviors of other bees. So bees don't learn by watching other bees and then repeating the bee movements. Really, it's just C. And I had to think about this a little bit, but trust me, there is a distinction between C and D. D is incorrect. It is not what the passage is talking about. The passage is talking about C. So bees observe other bees doing this, and then they learn and can do it themselves. All right, 27. Now we have to find the evidence for that. I'm going to read these lines. These are lines 46 to 49. Here's the evidence. I'm going to read from the passage. 46 to 49. This suggests the observer bees picked up something important from their fellow bees that helped them learn this unnatural task. So that's perfect evidence for the previous question. It's exactly what we were looking for that one. So that was 27. Now we're on 28. Here's a vocab question. What does means mean in this sentence? Let's look at 62. Here's means. This suggests bees weren't simply copying what they saw during the demonstration, but actually improved on the task by using the easiest means, by going to the closest ball. By using the easiest means, not by using the easiest instrument, that's not quite right, but by using the easiest approach, the closest ball. So be careful. Don't fall for near words that don't almost make sense. They weren't looking for the closest instrument, but the means most closely means approach, not instrument here. Which statement about the bee's success in the ball moving task is best supported by the data in figure 1? Well, let's look at figure 1. Here's figure 1. So it took a trained bee an average of a little over 40 seconds to become a bee succeeder, a bee ball mover. It took the magnet moving ball demonstration. Okay, so we have a fly that saw, or not a fly, a bee. We're talking about bees, right? Yeah, a bee. We had a bee who observed the ball moving by magnet. The bee still learned, but it took 80 seconds. So the bee still learned, but not quite as quickly as watching a plastic bee or watching another real bee push the magnetic ball or push the non-magnetized ball. The magnetic ball was a little bit worse, but we also have an untrained bee, no magnet ball, and some bees were able to still perform this task, and it would take almost 100 seconds. So that's what figure 1 says. All right, so how can we distill that data into one of these answer choices? It's just A. Observer bees benefited from seeing a demonstration of the ball moving task, whether it was by magnet or by bee, before attempting the task themselves. So that one's 29. Let's look at 30. According to figure 2, so we're on to our other figure. Which combination of demonstration type and ball's distance from the center of the platform yielded the least success in solving the task? Let's look at that bar graph. Well, this isn't too hard to see. Here's the least success. It's in the no training category with the furthest ball, which is right there. That's the least success for the experiment. No demonstration for this ball. Can you read a bar graph? Sure you can. All right, as used in line 69, the word limited most nearly means what? This is a vocab question. Let's read the sentence. All right. What's more, neurobiology and modeling research suggests that a very limited number of neurons, even just a few, can accomplish some rather complex cognitive tasks. All right, so I'm just going to highlight this word limited. Which is right here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to read some words back in the sentence in the place of limited and see what works. Let's try the first one. Let's try reduced. So you can limit something, you can reduce it. Is that what this means in this sentence? I don't know. Let's try it. Let's try reduced. Okay, what's more, neurobiology and modeling research suggests that a very reduced number of neurons, even just a few, can accomplish some rather complex cognitive tasks. That is incorrect. We're not reducing the number of neurons. It's just a small number of neurons. So you can limit something, you can limit the amount of something, but it may just be limited by default, and that's what we have here. bees have limited brain capacity just by their very nature of being bees. So let's read small back in the sentence. Small should make sense. What's more, neurobiology and modeling research suggests that a very small number of neurons, even just a few, can accomplish some rather complex cognitive tasks. So that makes perfect sense now that we've corrected it. A few more questions. Oh no, that passage is over. All right, we're on to the next passage. Just a couple more passages and then we're done. We are on to questions 32 through 42. This one is from a speech delivered by an abolitionist. Yeah, so this is the global conversation passage for this SAT essay. So we're going to read from this abolitionist. So this is a speech delivered in 1841 by Thomas Paul to the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. It is called "Let Us Do Justice to an Unfortunate People." They note Paul, a black abolitionist, worked with white abolitionist leader William Lloyd Garrison, who founded the American Anti-Slavery Society in 1833. All right, so let's jump to the first question for this passage, which is 32. It says, according to the passage, the author considers the campaign of the abolitionists to be strange, line 2, because it requires them to what? I'm going to read from line 2. Strange. I have often asked myself what posterity would think of the strange contest in which the abolitionists are engaged. Here we meet, time after time, newspapers are printed and speeches delivered. To prove what? Why? That a man is a man, that he is the only human possessor of himself? So our author is saying that the hardest things to prove are the things that need no proof. The hardest things to prove are the things that should need no proof whatsoever. Is an African-American man a man, right? That's what our speaker is saying here. So that's answer choice B. Abolitionists have the strange problem. They have the strange task of persuading others of a truth that should be very obvious to everyone. 33. The author suggests that abolitionists' persuasive methods will have to take into account their opponent's inability to comprehend logical arguments. And we have to find the evidence from the passage. Where does our author talk about how the opposition ignores logic completely? Completely. Happens here. Lines 12 to 16. I'm going to read those lines. 12 to 16. All right, here we go. This bit right here. The attempt to prove them, therefore, would be ridiculous were it not for the consideration of the amazing state of delusion and vassalage to which prejudice reduces the mind when unenlightened by reason. So why are these people illogical? Well, they've been corrupted. They've been corrupted by delusion and vassalage to their prejudice. So that was that bit right there that I just read. 35, they will test you on main ideas. A central claim is a main idea. So if you see it, think a main idea. Don't think detail. We're looking for main ideas here. All right, so which one of these is a central claim of the passage? Is it the public resistance to a cause delays the progress of justice by discouraging reformers? That's not in the passage. I'm going to cross it off. Garrison, that other abolitionist, is unlike most reformers in that he has been willing to endure constant criticism and abuse. Is that in the passage? Nope. It's not in the passage. Let's look at D. Slavery is harder to eliminate than other forms of oppression because the press has stifled abolitionist voices. Does our author mention the press? Yes. But that's a detail, not the main idea. The main idea is C. Reformers face significant challenges in addressing the social injustice of their eras. So our author does briefly mention the press, but that's more of a detail. We're looking for the main idea of the passage. What is this passage mainly about? Well, answer choice C answers the question of what is this passage mainly about. Answer choice D does not answer the question about what is this passage mainly about. So they will test you on main ideas. 36. Which statement best describes the method the author employs in the second paragraph to present his argument? Lines 17 through 45. Let's look at these lines. Okay, so that's this whole paragraph all the way up to here. All the way, this whole paragraph. So how does our author present the information within that paragraph? He explains the current situation by drawing a parallel to past reformers' experiences. What past reformer does our author mention? Galileo. So hopefully you saw he was referencing Galileo for answer choice B. That was the past reformer he was talking. And it is plural. He does talk about past reformers, but Galileo being one of them. Let's look at 37. The description of Galileo's experience in lines 1821 primarily serve to do what? They illustrate a preceding generalization about the effects of ignorance. I guess I'll just briefly read from this bit, 18 to 21. At one time we see Galileo thrown into prison by the Inquisition because he had made some discoveries and forced to purchase his liberty by retracting his opinions. So that's what happens to logic. That's what happens when ignorance encounters logic. Let's look at 38. The passage most strongly suggests that a society dominated by prejudice most likely has which effect on its members? And it's this. There's a metaphor. They are prevented from reaching their fullest potential. You know what the metaphor our author uses? I'm going to read this bit. It's interesting. Our author talks about the idea of clipping the wings. It's a metaphor. I'm going to read it, if I can find it. Here we go. I found it. Line 26. Clipping the wings of genius and retarding the progress of truth. I'm going to read this. Yeah, this is really good. When, therefore, we see the control which prejudice, aided by circumstances and encouraged by self-interest, has in times past exercised over the human mind, and the tenacity with which it has held its deluded victims, stopping up their avenues of improvement, clipping their wings of genius, retarding the progress of truth. So that was the metaphor. The minds whose energies have been crippled and whose spheres of actions have been curtailed by its influence. So, a society dominated by prejudice will be prevented from reaching its potential. And I read from these lines just now. That's our evidence for this one. In context, the phrase, as their traducers have represented in lines 41 to 42, most strongly suggests that opponents to abolition what? I'm going to read these lines. All right. That the modern champions of freedom do not savor so much of quixotism. So that's they call that impracticality. That's what the College Board is. You can tell this wasn't in the original text. This is their definition. But I would disagree with that definition. If someone's quixotic, they're foolishly idealistic, like Don Quixote. That's where this word comes from. Quixote. So if you ever read about Don Quixote, he was quixotic, foolishly idealistic. Impractical doesn't sound right. I'm going to give you a better definition. Foolishly idealistic, like Don Quixote, as their transducers have represented. So what does the passage say? as their traducers have represented, this suggests that the opponents of abolition distort the truth. So it's not that the abolitionists are quixotic. The anti-abolitionists are distorting the truth for their own purposes, for the purposes of prejudice. All right, just a couple more questions here. The author's attitude towards Garrison is best described as one of deep admiration. We don't get a lot here. We know that Garrison was an abolitionist. We know that Paul, our speaker, is an abolitionist. He would have no reason to dislike Garrison. We know our author says he will not eulogize Garrison, but we have no reason to think that he wouldn't admire Garrison. Let's look at 42. Here's another vocab question. As used in line 71, at once most nearly means what? Here's 71. He scatters his truths among the body politic, and its effect is electrical. He is greeted at once. So there's at once. All right, line 71, at once most nearly means what? I'm going to read the words simultaneously back into the sentence and see if it works. He is greeted simultaneously with smiles and frowns, with blessings and cursing, with eulogy and abuse. Now he is almost stifled with the caresses of devoted friends, and anon he is exposed to the fury of a bloodthirsty mob. So does at once mean simultaneous? Yes, it does. So that was the answer choice A. These would produce gibberish if you read them back in the sentence. Last passage. Here we go. Oh, it's a pair of passages. All right, here's our final pair of passages on a similar theme. The first passage is adapted from Free-Floating Planets May Be More Common Than Stars, published in 2011 by National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Passage 2 is adapted from Ashley Yeager, Few Big Rogue Planets Roam the Galaxy, Recount Shows, from 2017 by Society for Science and the Public. So we have a pair of passages. Let's dive into the first question. Do the results of the survey described in passage 1 support the conclusion that there are twice as many Jupiter mass free-floating planets as Earth mass ones? So no, they don't. Because the survey does not include direct information about Earth mass free-floating planets. Why? We don't have that information. We only know about the gravitational interference of the Jupiter or bigger sized ones. We don't know about Earth-sized mass planets because they're going to be harder to observe. So that's why that one's D. Now we need the evidence. The evidence was C. I'm going to read the evidence from 20 to 23. Here's that evidence. The survey is not sensitive to planets smaller than Jupiter and Saturn. Well, there you go. There's your evidence. So that wasn't too bad. 45. According to passage 2, Mraz and colleagues analyzed microlensing events to do what? Well, they were trying to do the same thing that these guys were trying to do. They were trying to determine the same thing, how many big free-floating planets exist in the Milky Way galaxy. So both authors of both studies were trying to do the similar thing. All right, it's 46. As used in line 78, account for most nearly means what? So here's a vocab question. All right, can we figure out what account for means here? I'm just going to read back some other choices. Let's try explained. It challenged long-held ideas about how planets go rogue because the known methods wouldn't generate enough planets to explain all the wanderers. Well, you know what? That just made perfect sense. It's that easy. If you tried comprise, let's try locate. It's going to make gibberish, I promise you. Let's try it. It challenged long-held ideas about how planets go rogue because the known methods wouldn't generate enough planets to locate. Wait a second. Explained. Hold on a second. Yeah, okay, so that one was A. Let's try 47. The sixth paragraph of passage 2, lines 85 to 92 serve as what? Sixth paragraph. I'm just going to count 85 to 92. So this is this paragraph right here. So he notes, the new data do reveal 4 times as many Jupiter mass failed stars called brown dwarfs than predicted in the original census. So some of the rogues that were originally classified as planets may in fact be failed stars. Okay, so that paragraph suggests C, an acknowledgement of recent findings and an explanation for how they may reflect on the previous findings. So the recent finding is 4 times as many. And what's the explanation? Brown dwarfs. So we have both a number, 4 times as many, and an explanation, well, maybe they're the brown dwarfs. 48. As used in line 59, giving up most nearly means what? All right, here is 59. Giving up. All right, distorts and focuses the light, giving up the planet's existence. I'm going to read the words back in the sentence. And let's see if they make any sense. Let's try A, transferring. It distorts and focuses the light, transferring the planet's existence. That makes no sense. Let's try abandoning. It distorts and focuses the light, abandoning the planet's existence. That makes no sense. Let's try interrupting. It distorts and focuses the light, interrupting the planet's existence. That makes no sense. Last one, it better work. It distorts and focuses the light, revealing the planet's existence. That makes perfect sense. Always read the words back in the sentence. It's not cheating. It works really well. 49. Which choice best describes the relationship between the 2 passages? All right. The results of passage 2 challenge the results of passage 1 because they find way more Jupiter-sized planets than they do in the first passage. And 50 says, on which point about free-floating Jupiter-mass planets do the passages most clearly disagree? Well, they really disagree on number. That's what we said is all about number. So the first passage has a different number. That's all the number. And then 51, 2 more questions. Yay. Which choice from passage 2 provides the best evidence that the number is different for the other study? 66 through 69, I'm going to read these lines. This should suggest that. 66 through 69. The new results sharply contrast an estimate published in 2011. Hey, that's this one, by the way. That's the 2011 one. So it sharply contrasts this, which suggests that rogue Jupiter is almost twice as common as main sequence stars. So that's very different results than the original study. So that's our evidence right there. That was answer choice C. Finally, which scientific idea is suggested in both passages? Both passages mention A, lower mass planets are more likely to be ejected from their stars than Jupiter mass planets are. And you know what? Passage 1 does this around line 20. And in passage 2, this occurs right around line 94. So that was the entire March 2021 SAT. We finished it. So I know we did it in a strange order, but we did the no calculator. Then we did, what did we do? Yeah, we did the no calculator, then we did the writing section, then we did the calculator permitted section, and then we finally did the reading section. So that's it. That's the entire March 2021 SAT. For review for you guys is just a bonus material that we decided to put online. So that's all that we have for today. I'm going to sign us off. I think that's enough of that. So have a great day.